get going then. Here we go.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Welcome to the Great Loop Radio podcast, brought to you by America's Great Loop Cruisers Association. We're dedicated to sharing Great Loop information and inspiration with those actively cruising, planning for, or dreaming about a Great Loop adventure. I'm Kim Rousseau. I'm the director of AGLCA. Today we are going to tackle the topic of lithium batteries, which can sometimes be a little bit controversial. The topic came up in our forum recently, and it started off a little bit controversial and eventually settled down to sharing some really great information. So I have invited Mike Bell to join me. He is one of the voices of reason, so to speak, in this whole discussion. He's a longtime AGLCA member and a Gold Looper, and we are going to get some detailed information from him about lithium batteries, specifically to the Great Loop. So we'll bring in Mike in just a second. Before we do, I want to take a moment to recognize and thank our Admiral sponsors who support AGLCA at the highest level. They are Kathy All. She is a certified financial planner with Edward Jones. Great Loop Yacht Sales, Passage Maker Trawler Fest, Skipper Bob Publications, and Waterway Guide Media. As always, we encourage our listeners and viewers to support these businesses that support the Great Loop. And with the sponsors appropriately recognized, I want to formally introduce Mike Bell. Mike, thanks so much for joining me today.
It's a pleasure. It's always good to talk with you.
Yeah, and I appreciate it so much. Before we jump into the topic, just give us a little bit of information about yourself and your own cruising experiences.
I'm a retired electrical engineer. I was a chief engineer for a family of military airplanes for Lockheed Martin before I retired. I bought a boat after I retired. I've been cruising, living on it for about 8 years, done the Great Loop. So I'm a Gold Looper. We've cruised about 30,000 miles, I'd guess. And I'm a 100-ton master for near coastal waters, and I have an ABYC marine electrical certification. Just kind of, you have to keep, I think it's important to keep learning all your whole life. And so I've continued to learn after retirement, and it's been a rewarding thing for me.
Yeah, and we appreciate you sharing that knowledge, and you do bring a unique credibility to the discussion because of your background and because of how many miles you've also cruised. So let's go ahead and jump in. Um, like most things, there are pluses and
Okay.
minuses, advantages and disadvantages to converting your boat to lithium if it has not already been produced that way. Most Great Loop boats, we'd be talking about a conversion to lithium, but regardless of whether it's a conversion or you're purchasing a boat new, give us some of the advantages and disadvantages of having lithium batteries installed.
Okay, so a battery is just an energy storage device. Lithium is somewhat more efficient than lead acid batteries. And by efficiency, that means if you put a certain amount of energy into the battery, you get almost that same amount of energy back out. Lithium is more efficient than others. It's somewhere in the 95 to 97% range. Flooded batteries are about 80% efficient, and AGM batteries, another lead acid technology, is about 85 to 88% efficient. So lithium's that efficiency helps a little bit, especially if you're living on a boat with a very small power footprint. That can make a big difference. Um, it Lithium also charges faster than because of the way it charges. It charges more rapidly than lead acid batteries. Some of the disadvantages: lithium can catch fire. Lithium batteries have a propensity to catch fire at much lower temperatures than other energy storage devices. And so the safety aspects of lithium, you have to really pay attention to that if you're going to do it on your boat. And that's extremely important to stick with to follow the safety standards as closely as one can.
Yeah, and that is exactly in a nutshell where the kind of the controversy comes from, because there are those who think that this technology is absolutely safe for boats, and there are those who point to the fires in lithium batteries that we hear about occasionally on the news and say, why would you want to be sleeping on top of a boat that is powered with lithium batteries. And
Yeah,
that is exactly where the discussions tend to run astray a little bit.
yeah.
Most newer devices that we are purchasing, cell phones, electric bikes, electric scooters, are lithium powered. So you probably already have a few lithium batteries on your boat. But that said, the battery bank to power the boat is going to be a much bigger lithium installation. So, give us the lowdown. Is it safe at this point in time with the technology where it stands today to use lithium batteries to power your boat?
Yes, I think it is safe. But again, you have to follow the safety standards, and some of them are kind of common sense stuff. Don't mount them in a location where they're exposed to high temperatures. So that means don't put the lithium batteries in the engine room.
Mhm.
That's a very basic safety thing. The fusing for lithium batteries is different, and way you put the types of fuses you have to use, you must use are different than maybe some lead acid battery installations. So if you observe the safety precautions, yes, I think the lithium batteries are safe. Let me also say that there are six types of lithium batteries on the market today. They're referred to as chemistries. So of those six, only lithium iron phosphate is suitable for use on boats. There's a couple reasons for that. One is that is the lithium battery with the highest thermal runaway temperature, which is thermal runaway is the battery fire. So it has the highest temperature. It's the most resistant to fires of the many lithium chemistries available. But it's also the lithium battery where the cell voltages line up to be a direct replacement for 12 volt systems. So they're directly applicable to 12 volt or 24 volt boats. So that kind of the stars kind of line up on that. They're the safest of the options, and they work well with 12 volt systems, which is what most of our boats use. But by no means are they certainly can still catch fire if they're exposed to the wrong thing. So you really need to pay attention to the safety standards.
Hmm. And just to give us an idea, what kind of temperatures are we talking about that these batteries would need to be exposed to for
Well,
the fire?
it's the battery manufacturers' recommendations need to be followed. So most of them are in the 50 degrees C range, which is 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Um, the engine room on my boat routinely gets above 135 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer when we're running, especially after we've run for several days. So that exceeds the temperature where the battery should be exposed to.
Hmm.
Um, so that's a key thing. And anybody, I always recommend that people not put lithium batteries in their engine rooms. It's just not the right place for them. You need to find someplace else to install them. But let me also say that while that's the temperature the battery is exposed to, the actual thermal runaway temperature for lithium iron phosphate is about 350 degrees C. The battery can reach that if it's damaged, mechanically, physically damaged, or if it's there are some situations where faults can start to happen inside the battery cells, and when those faults, they're called dendrites. When those dendrites grow, they're like driving a nail into the battery, and that shorts out the battery and immediately causes it to a very large increase in pressure and temperature, which is the cause of fires.
Hmm.
So installing where you install the battery is one of the real key safety factors here.
Hmm. So sounds like bottom line is while fire is possible, it's unlikely if the installation and the manufacturer's instructions are followed
I think
correctly.
that's true, and there are some. The fusing is really important as well, and the way you
Hmm.
charge the battery. Those are the really biggest aspects of lithium battery installations.
So the fusing and the way you charge is important. If you're doing this type of installation or having this type of installation done to a boat that was previously on flooded batteries, lead acid batteries, I'm way outside my technical comfort zone here.
You're
How much
you're doing
of
great, Kim.
thanks. How much of the rest of the boat wiring would be impacted? Are we talking about a complete rewire of the boat to convert to lead acid, or are we just worried about the batteries themselves, the fuses, and the things that you've mentioned?
Really, no, you wouldn't rewire the boat. You need to be very careful with the fusing and the battery switching, and the wires that are used to connect to the battery. They need to be the appropriate size and the right kind of battery wire. But no, the whole boat does not need to be rewired.
Okay. Well,
Not
that's
at
good
all.
news. One of the things that I found interesting about the recent forum discussion was the idea that this shouldn't really be that big of an issue for loopers because many of them probably don't need lithium.
Right. Right.
And that was an interesting conversation to me. It almost was akin to the idea when loopers ask me if they need a water maker to do the Great Loop.
Yeah.
Everybody's loop is different, but you only need a water maker if you're planning a very extended trip to the Bahamas. It takes a while for the cost of that water maker to balance itself out in what you pay for water in the Bahamas. So it struck me as almost that kind of a discussion, but we know lithium is an emerging technology or maybe already emerged, but becoming increasingly popular, particularly among boaters as it becomes more accepted and more safe. But there are probably cruising styles that would benefit a heck of a lot more from lithium than others. So tell us who is most likely to get the return on investment from installing lithium.
So, like you say, and as we all know, there's a lot of ways to do the loop. Someone who really prefers to anchor out almost all the time would benefit from lithium uh, because of the storage efficiency of the battery. Those are the people who are going to benefit the most. Um, some people want the latest technology. I call it the latest shiny object. It's not really suitable for everyone because there are some technical aspects of lithium batteries you really need to pay attention to, and not everyone has the background to do that. But I think most people um, could safely install lithium, and it would make them somewhat more independent of marinas and shoreside installations than others might be. So yeah, there are some situations with loopers where it would improve your loop. I, I wouldn't. I don't personally see the way I use my boat. I don't have lithium, and I probably won't ever put it in. But I could see how it could benefit some people, some loop experiences.
Mhm. So this may be an unfair question because I know there's lots of parameters here, but is there any way to gauge how much benefit you can get, meaning how much additional time at anchor, or how much more power you can draw from a lithium battery versus acid if you do
Okay,
make this conversion?
right. So that's a good question.
Mhm.
Um, and it's I have to give you a technical answer to it.
Okay, that's fine.
So yeah, batteries, deep cycle batteries or house batteries in is the term that's commonly used. They're rated by amp hours, and all lead acid batteries, deep cycle, are rated by there'll be 100 amp hours or 200 or 250 amp hours. Depends on the battery size and how big, frankly, how big the battery is.
Hmm.
Lithium is also rated. Lithium is essentially a deep cycle battery, and it's also rated by amp hours. So, but what's unique about lithium? Lead acid batteries should not be discharged more than 50% of their state of charge. Otherwise, the battery lifetime will be significantly decreased. Lithium can be discharged down to about 15 to 20% of its state of charge. So you can, for let's say a lead acid bank of 100 amp hours, you can really only use 50 of those amp hours. Lithium, you can use about 80. So lithium. You can have a smaller number of amp hours in a lithium battery bank and get the same amount of performance from it as you would from a much larger lead acid battery bank.
Hmm. Okay,
So
good to
sorry,
know.
I had to get a little technical there.
No, one of the reasons, Mike, I asked you to do this is because you do have a way of taking the technical, the highly technical, and breaking it down to where someone like me can at least understand what you're saying, even if I don't know all of the terms.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Very much appreciated. So, in your opinion, from having done the loop, done some extended cruising beyond that, how would installing lithium change the experience for someone who is getting ready to do the loop?
So, uh, like I said before, it enables you to be more independent of shore power.
Hmm.
Some of the discussions we've started to have, some of it was on the forum. Could you use a lithium battery bank to power an air conditioner overnight? And yeah, that's possible. It's got to be a pretty sizable bank because air conditioning requires quite a bit of power. But that something like that is just not feasible with lead acid batteries.
Hmm.
So that's a situation where you potentially could use lithium to improve your loop experience. Um, you could also, if you want to anchor, some loopers will anchor for just a single overnight and then move their boat every day.
Hmm.
Maybe even only a few miles. But while you're moving, of course, your batteries are charging. Um, with lithium, some people would be able to anchor multiple days without running the generator or engine to charge the batteries. And so that, in a way, that changes the loop experience for some people. So a lot of it comes back to how are you going to do your loop?
Hmm.
What are the things that are important to you? Do you want to be tied up to a marina on a dock where you can socialize with others? Do you prefer to be off by yourself alone? Do you want to visit cities or towns and talk to locals? There's a whole bunch of different ways to do the loop, and I think everyone should do it their own way. Whatever really appeals to them is how they should do it.
Yeah. Let's take a quick break and play a message from a sponsor. When we come back, I do want to talk about the cost a little bit more because, as you said, everybody's loop is different, and some may find the cost worth it for switching to lithium, and some may not. So let's take that break. We'll be back in a moment. Cross Country Boat Transport has been a family owned company since 1991. We have 3 drivers with boatloads of experience transporting overdimensioned power and sailboats around the lower 48 states. If your perfect looping boat is on the wrong coast, give us a call or send us an email. We'll be happy to discuss transport and answer any questions you may have. Check out our website at crosscountryboat.com, where you can request a quote, view our gallery, and read testimonials from past customers. We're also the go-to for mass transport down to Mobile for our sailing loopers. Did you know that 50 years ago, the first ever chart kit was born? Chart kits are one of more than 100 chart products from MapTech to help loopers. MapTech's Embassy Cruising Guides and Anchorage books are also a must for loopers. Go to their website, maptech.com, to get started. That's maptech.com. Want more? How about moremaptech.com? It's an interactive website with even more information for loopers. That's moremaptech.com. While you're there, check out MapTech's drone videos. These let you virtually navigate a destination before you get there. Just another aid for loopers, and thanks to MapTech, an AGLCA sponsor. Welcome back to the Great Loop Radio podcast. My guest today is Mike Bell. He is filling us non-technical people in on the ups and downs and inside outs of lithium batteries and whether it makes sense for loopers to make that conversion. Mike, we haven't really talked too much about the cost of converting to lithium. You tell me that the lithium batteries are more expensive. Are they worth it? And how do you help, start to figure out that cost analysis to figure out if it's worth it for you?
So that's a good question. And uh, first off, it's not just the cost of the lithium batteries. They are more expensive than an equivalent lead acid battery. Um, but it's not just the cost of that. There is the installation costs, there is wiring that has to be changed, and some safety related components that need to be added. So I think the first step in determining the cost of an installation is to determine a power budget, how much electrical equipment is operated during a typical overnight or during a typical anchoring period, and then how much equipment's operated, what power does it draw, and so how much energy storage is needed to get through that anchoring period, and then add up the installation costs, and you can size the battery bank and then determine the overall cost of the system. Um, Lithium also has an advantage, and I didn't mention this previously. It's believed that lithium will retain its usability for about 3,000 to 5,000 charge discharge cycles. In other words, 3,000 to 5,000 times of discharging the battery and then fully recharging the battery. Lead acid is about 300 to 500 charge discharge cycles. So it's believed to have a long-term, a much longer lifetime,
Hmm.
and that's not proven, but that's pretty well predicted, but not proven by any means. So uh, if let's say if lithium is 10 times as much as an equivalent lead acid bank, you really need to decide how long you want to keep your boat to get a payback from that extended lifetime. If you're going to do the loop and sell your boat right afterwards, you may not get your money back. You might have had a good experience, but you're not going to get a return on your investment. Whereas someone who plans to do the loop and then keep their boat for another 6, 8, 10 years, you might get a payback to it from it because you could avoid having multiple battery replacement uh, cycles in there. So those are all kind of the cost benefit trade-offs that have to be done. But it all comes down to at the beginning of it, it all comes down to an energy usage budget, how much you plan to use, and an estimate of the installation costs. Those are the things that are key to determining if it's a cost effective approach for a particular looper.
Yeah. Well, and as you said, sometimes it's the attraction to the latest, greatest, shiny thing that's going to make somebody install it, and they may not be as worried about the return on investment. But you
Yeah.
made a great point about, how long do you intend to keep that looper boat? And I find a lot of loopers just don't know the answer to that when they start out doing the loop. I think there's impression that a lot of people buy a boat, do the loop, sell the boat with that as the whole plan, the end, see you around. But we are finding more and more that finish the loop and then sell the boat because that boat was very mission specific to the Great Loop. Some upsize from there. They bought perhaps a 35-ish foot boat thinking we're going to do this for a year and then we're on to something else and love it, but want more room as their forever boat. Some people have a 40 footer and decide, well, I really like this, but I want to be able to trailer it back to the Great Lakes and explore that area more. So that's going to be a hard thing for soon to be loopers to assess as they're buying a boat and determining whether to convert to lithium. And in those cases, if you're worried about the return on investment, it probably makes sense to wait. And if this turns out to be your forever boat and you're finding out you're doing extended Bahamas cruise and extended anchoring, then maybe that's the time to do that conversion. Um, any ballpark range you can give us for what something like this would cost? Let's use the average loop size boat as a 40-foot boat. I know there's a million different parameters that could be considered here, but, you know, give us a range. Are we talking about from 1,000 to 10,000? Or are we talking, I don't mind if it's a huge range, but just to set the stage a little bit, what kind of expectation do you think might be reasonable?
So I just replaced the batteries in my boat. I use flooded lead acid batteries,
Hmm.
and um, I just replaced them, and they were for 1,200 amp hours. It was about a little over $1,000 to
Okay.
buy the batteries. Now, I did the installation myself
Hmm.
in the previous battery replacement cycle, so all of that was done. But a similar set of lithium batteries is probably going to be about $4,000 to $5,000 for the batteries themselves.
Hmm.
And if you need to do the installation, you've probably got another probably 1,500 to 2,000 in parts, and that assumes that you do the labor yourself.
Hmm.
If you have to pay for labor to do the installation, it's probably all in. You're probably in the $10,000 range for
Hmm.
a typical loop size boat. And those are numbers that I'm kind of pulling out of the air a little bit. But
That's fine. We won't hold you to it. But at least,
I'm giving a quote here.
but it lets people know if they're talking about, a night at a marina cost versus, a many boat unit cost. It at least
Yeah,
sets the stage a little bit, sets a
yeah.
little bit of an expectation. One of the things that you mentioned there, as you were kind of describing the cost of the installation, and you have stressed, how important that is for this to be safe. So tell us about, is this possibly a DIY installation? How much knowledge do you need to be able to do it and do it right and make sure that you and everybody aboard is safe?
So it's possible to safely do the installation yourself, I think. If you are somewhat handy with electrical and mechanical things. You can purchase pre-made cables if you don't have the tools to make battery cables yourself. And you can buy all the components. Frankly, I buy most of mine off of Amazon because that's got the best price. But good quality components are available just about everywhere. Um, the um, but so I think it's safe to do that. I think it's also very important though to before you start the installation to do a design of the installation and and to ask for help. There is some fantastic help available through the AGLCA forum and through the MTOA program. Jim Healy, Lou Graham, myself, we're all retired electrical engineers. We're all, I think, willing to help others. I can't volunteer their time, but I volunteer my own time. But but there is a tremendous amount of very talented people available through the AGLCA forum, and if someone's considering doing it, I would strongly encourage them to ask a question on the forum or email one of us directly if and pose questions. I think we all want to see others do things safely and have a good loop experience, and that's to me one of the key things is being willing to ask for help. I think that's really an important thing for someone considering a lithium battery installation.
That's great advice, and we also thank you and the others who have contributed so much to the forum, but even volunteering your time to help people, after they've kind of designed the system, make sure that they've done it right. That's super important, obviously. We had actually delayed recording this podcast for a few weeks because the ABYC, did I get the acronym right?
You did.
American Boating and Yachting Council, is that correct?
American Boat and
Um,
Yacht Council, yes.
yes. The ABYC was coming out with a new set of standards, and that is a body that sets standards for all things related to boating, including lithium batteries. So we're kind of waiting to see what the new standards might be. I think that the changes in the end were not huge, but tell us a little bit about that, and are we expecting even more standards to be published by that organization?
Yeah, so the American Boat and Yacht Council, ABYC, is this is the standards organization for all recreational boats. It's the equivalent of the National Electric Code for terrestrial installations, electrical work. They have just published an update. They typically release their updates on a 3-year cycle. The electrical updates were delayed by a year, so there's a pretty substantial update. It was just published within the last 2 weeks. I haven't fully, I didn't participate in the latest committees um, that modified the standard. I probably will participate in the next one and I haven't finished analyzing all the changes they've put forth. But a couple things that are really unique to lithium battery installations, all battery installations really. Um, there was previously a requirement for fusing for an entire battery bank, a single fuse for an entire battery bank. That is now changed. It's for a battery bank made up of multiple batteries, a fuse is required for each of the batteries in the battery bank and then a separate fuse for the outside the battery bank. So that's what this does. It prevents this change prevents let's say a short in one battery inside the bank should pop the fuses and would protect all the other batteries from also going into a thermal runaway battery fire. So I think it's an important change, but that is a change that's happening. Also, lithium battery banks are now required to have a battery switch for each of the batteries in the battery bank. So that's, and then again, a separate battery switch for the entire bank as a whole. So a lot more switching, a lot more fusing. I think all of that's an important safety update. These are, in spite of what people think, lithium batteries really are a new technology, and the industry as a whole is learning about how to do this safely. And there's kind of a it kind of you kind of have to put some of the installations out there to learn what to do and what not to do. And we're going through that. We're living through that right now.
Hmm.
So I think the standards are likely to continue to change. I think they're going to settle down somewhat from where they've been, the number of changes that have been happening in the past. But
Yeah.
now I think there's going to be another battery technology that will come out in about 5 years, sodium ion, and I think that's going to drive a whole new set of changes. So
Hmm.
people with the latest shiny object is my term. They're going to look for a new battery in 5 years, perhaps,
Yeah.
and there'll be a whole new set of safety standards to learn as those things get fielded. So, but yeah, I think the safety standards will continue to evolve a little bit, and I think it's important to follow them, especially with these newer technologies. Very stringently follow those safety standards.
Yeah. And you mentioned, Mike, that the new standards do apply to lead acid batteries as well with the fusing. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and so
So,
there are some changes to lead acid as well.
so for someone who, all of us already have batteries of one type or another on our boat for the most part, um, what's required as these standards change? Do existing installations need to go back and be retrofitted to meet that? And, are there insurance parameters there that might be pushing that for existing installations?
Well, so the new safety standard, which was just released, has a 1 year period. So it's August of 2026 is when it's recommended to be used, and that's primarily for new construction boats. Um, my opinion, generally boats are grandfathered in. You wouldn't have to, the safety standards, if your boat was built in 1985, don't apply today, 40 years later.
Hmm.
Um, Things have changed a lot, but you're not required to go and rewire your boat. However, in the case of new technologies like lithium batteries, I think it is important to go back and conform to the newest safety standards. I think that's a real important step. But I wouldn't suggest that your boat needs to be rewired because it's a 40-year-old boat and it no longer conforms to all of the safety standards. I think it's just selective ones that you should conform to as they evolve.
Gotcha. Mike, this has been a really great discussion. As I said, I think you really have an ability to boil down some of the highly
You're
technical
very
topics
kind.
that we see to very usable information. So thank you for sharing that with us today. It's been a pleasure.
It has been for me as well, Kim.
Yeah. And for anybody who's watched or listened today and would like to see more of Mike, he is presenting at our fall rendezvous this year. He has very graciously agreed to present on Florida's East Coast and also on traveling to the Bahamas. So we're looking forward to that. It'll be great to see you in person, Mike, and hopefully Mary Lou will be coming along with you for the ride and joining
Yeah.
us and doing some presenting if she'd like as well. So we're looking forward to that. Registration for that event is open. So check out our website for that. And thank you to everyone who's watched or listened. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Great Loop Radio podcast. Until then, safe cruising.